Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories, a podcast designed to inspire single parents. Here you'll find resources from self-care to finances to parenting and everything in between. Discover what it takes to thrive. Let the stories inspire you to what is possible. Hello and welcome to Single Parent Success Stories. Today we have a special guest, Crissy Freeman, joining us from Portland, Maine. In her mid-40s, Crissy made the difficult decision to leave her marriage after 19 years and face the fear of being a single mom, maintaining a full-time job, and the anxiety of financial insecurity. As a child of divorce herself, Crissy had spent her whole life doing what she thought others expected of her. Meanwhile, she was suffering on the inside because she was ignoring her own needs. It was time to make a change. No more excuses. This new journey led her to follow her heart and her passion. Despite the challenge of balancing her corporate career and pursuing her dreams, she decided to embark on a journey of helping other women create a fulfilling and authentic life after divorce by becoming a coach and host of her own podcast titled From Misses to Me. Welcome, Crissy. It is a pleasure to have you.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So please share with us. I know I summarized a little bit about your story, but in your own words, uh,
Yeah,
what
thank
was
you.
it like?
Yeah, so I think I should go back just a little bit and just share, as a child of divorce, I became very good at being sort of the peacemaker, is what I like to refer to it as. I was the child that made sure that everybody was okay. And the way to do that was through humor, was through being the good girl and following the rules and making sure that everybody was getting a version of me that made them feel good. And so that was me as a child. And I think it's important to outline that because I carried that sort of role, the costume for so long. And I carried it into my marriage. I married someone who was a workaholic and also an alcoholic. And that sort of allowed me to continue to be that codependent, to continue to be that as a mom and also as a spouse. And so, sort of protecting everybody and hiding the big secret, which was that we looked like we had everything from the on the outside, and on the inside I was struggling to hide this secret of being married to someone who was an addict. And in doing that, I was able to use those skills that I had developed as a child, those coping skills, to really become this codependent that was struggling so much on the inside. I was a shell of myself. I didn't know who I was. And so I spent 19 years in this marriage thinking that my role was to protect my children from the truth and also to make sure that in order to have peace, just like I did as a child, in order to have peace, I was doing all the things that he wanted me to as a mom, as a spouse, and walking on eggshells every single day. So I stayed in this mode in my marriage. And the reason it lasted for 19 years is I stayed in this place of should I stay or should I go? Which I think so many women stay in as a mom in the fear of if I leave, what does that mean for my kids? Now, this secret I've been carrying is now going to be theirs. They are going to see it because I can no longer protect them from it. And so that fear kept me from really taking any steps forward. And then the other thing that I did is and I think a lot of women do, is I was looking to other people to tell me what to do. to give me that answer of, is it okay if I leave? Am I making the right decision? What is being a perfect mom? What does that look like? And so I made my decisions from that place. And it wasn't until I really started doing the inner work. In fact, I went away. I will never forget this. I decided I'd never really been alone with myself. And it actually made me really uncomfortable to be alone. And so I decided to go on a retreat by myself. And I went on this beautiful yoga retreat, and that's when things started to switch. I realized that I'm the only one who can make this decision, and I need to stop this pattern of behavior. And so that's when I made that decision. It had been years of me in and out of the marriage. And that weekend, I said, nope, no more. I'm not going to do it. And that's when I left.
Wow. And I can relate to so much to what you said, because I also wanted to keep peace and being the child or the peacemaker, not to cause any trouble whatsoever. Peace at
Yeah,
all costs, and sometimes it's not such a good peace, because every time we don't say how we feel, we don't speak up, the other person can take it as this is how you're supposed to be treated. This is normal.
exactly. Yeah. And it becomes part of, I think, your nature, who you are. And you have no idea at your core, I think, what you like, who you really are. And that's a scary place to be.
Yeah, and another thing is, like you said, you never been with yourself. I think we always, like when we're growing up, we're with our parents, and then let's say you meet someone, you with that person, and then you become the spouse, and then you have children. You never actually have that time when you kind of look at your life kind of and reassess, where am I going? Who am I? What do I like? Because you want to keep the piece together. You want to keep up the appearances. You want to be together. And a lot of times kind of two different people come with different beliefs and different views of the world and how everything's supposed to be.
Yeah,
And sometimes we do need to make a compromise, but those compromises can need to be weighed down. Some compromises should never be made, because then we lose ourselves in the process. And then, 10, 15 years later, we can find ourselves lost because we have been complying or merging into that other person and losing ourselves in the process, losing our core values, our beliefs, and whatever makes us who we are.
yes,
When you were
exactly.
growing up in a single parent household, what things worked and what were some of the challenges and you wish were different?
Oh, wow. That's such a great question. And yeah, so my mom, I had this view as a child as my mom was my hero. She was this woman who she went back, she was a stay-at-home mom. She did not have a college degree. She went to there was a local shipyard, which was primarily male, and she was one of the only females. And she trained to become a machinist and worked on submarines.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, Mom. And she would come home and tell stories of, back then there wasn't really harassment, like it is now. And so men would whistle at her. She was walking to work and make these comments. And because she was one of very few females. And I kept saying, Mom, how can you do that? And she's like, because I'm strong enough in myself to know that that's about them. That's not about me. And I'm here for a purpose. And my purpose is to raise you and your brother in a way that I want to raise you. And I can't do that she was working in the school cafeteria at the time. She's like, I can't do that. And I know that I have to work beside these men in order to make the money that I want to make. And so that to me was like so inspiring as a young girl.
Mhm.
And so when I look back as a child, like I'm so happy I had that opportunity, not to see her suffer, but to see her overcome something that was incredibly challenging. And while, yes, it took away time from us as kids, it was, she created a life for us where we didn't have to be without, because my dad married another woman and did not give my mom, did not support her very much financially. And so she did this on her own. She knew she had to. So that part was sort of where she was my hero. Where I learned what I didn't want to do as a parent was where she would literally put me in between her and my dad, where she would struggle with him, you know, not sort of showing up. And so she would say to me, "You need to tell your dad that he needs to do this." Or she would say, she would talk to me just about the horrible things that he would do and, how he was a bad dad and all these other things. And that toxic environment was, as a child, that's where this codependent child was created, was this, I don't want that anger. I don't want that noise. This is making me so uncomfortable being in the middle. So I'm just going to please everybody. I'm going to please my dad over here. I'm going to please my mom over here. And I'm not going to complain about a thing. I'm going to be the good child. And so, what it created in me was a couple of things. One was I had this thought in my mind that when I get married, it's going to be forever. I am never going to do that to my children, ever. And so I had that in my mind, and I really think that that's also one of the reasons it took me so long to leave this toxic situation. Was I had promised that to myself. And so I learned now on the other side of it, I've learned a lot around, you know, yes, my mom was strong. Yes, she was courageous. And that I also got from her. And I thank her for that. But I've also learned that from a co-parenting perspective, you don't have to put your children in the middle, regardless of how toxic it is, regardless of the hurt that you've experienced. A child does not need to carry that. And you can have a healthy co-parenting relationship with someone that has hurt you.
True. You're right, because it's about how we feeling, and we don't need to put the burden on our children.
Exactly.
Let them have their own experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that was, I think, where my mom, I know she was in a lot of pain. And so I empathize with that. And, I love her for everything that she went through. I love her just for who she is as a mom. But I think what I have learned and what I teach my clients is there are so many other people you can go to for support instead of putting that burden on your children. I get you need an outlet. I get that it's painful, but that's part of the work, is finding sort of your support system and your village that can help you get through, so that you aren't taking all of that out, all of that pain and suffering out onto your children. So there's so many other ways. And for me, it really was discovering that I can have the support that I need, and then at the same time be a really good co-parent. I can, come up with a way to communicate with my spouse, that's my former spouse, excuse me, that's healthy, and set boundaries at the same time. And I think, those are the things that are crucial as a co-parent, is setting healthy boundaries for yourself, as well as setting clear communication that is healthy and allows you to be able to still keep the lines of communication going.
I love that. So true.
Yes.
When you became a single parent, did you face any challenges? Was what everything smooth?
Oh, thank you for that question because it comes up all the time in the work that I do. Is I thought in my mind that after 19 years of living in this place of walking on eggshells, fear every day, being a codependent, that I was going to leave and it was going to be like this huge weight lifted off my shoulders. Life was going to be easy peasy, and I was going to be able to, build this amazing life on my own. Boy, was I wrong. And I just want to tell any woman out there, anyone out there in this situation that, that's not what happens. It is hard. It is every single day. It is putting one foot in front of the other. It is small steps. It is not you're going to wake up. Yes, there is going to be a sense of relief. There definitely is. There's going to be okay, I don't have to listen to that person anymore. I don't have to be in that environment anymore. But then other things come in, like, how am I going to do this on my own financially? And that is scary when you have a partner to rely on. And how am I going to do that and also have a life that is fulfilling? And what does that even look like? And then to go back to what you talked about before, which is where this whole Mrs. To Me, from Mrs. To Me podcast came in and business came in, is then it's who the heck am I? I have no idea. I have been playing this role of fixing and pleasing for so many years that it almost became comfortable because I was so used to it. And I think one of the keys for anyone after divorce is to learn to get comfortable in the discomfort. It is so uncomfortable. Every day you wake up and it's a new day, it's a new challenge. And I think that's where change happens. Change happens when we're uncomfortable. And I have learned that. And I lived in the comfort zone for so long, putting up these walls to protect myself. And now it was like, phew, those walls are gone. They are gone. And I am out in the open and I can't hide anymore. So, how am I going to do this? And at first, what happened was I started that old pattern of, oh, I'm going to go to other people to get the answer. I'm going to ask all these people what I should do. And when I realized, and I was looking at all these self-help books and all these things, it was like, there's no answer. The answer is here. The answer is within me. And until I figured that out, it was a long journey of mistakes in the beginning. It was jumping into relationships before I was ready and getting into these horrible situations that I needed to get myself out of. And it wasn't until I realized that I have to start loving myself. I have to look in the mirror at that person and first say, I like you. Like, I really like you. Before I could even get to the love part, it was like, I like you for all your quirks, all your mistakes you've made, all the things. I'm going to forgive you for all of that. And then I'm going to start liking you. And then we're going to get to the self-love journey, which is when everything starts to open up. So it was a journey. And I'm glad you asked that question because I think so many people out there think that once you leave the marriage, it's roses and butterflies. And it is not. It is, it's getting comfortable in the discomfort.
You're so right. We only grow from change, from pain, from
Exactly.
difficult circumstances and situations. Anytime there is something happens like that, it is our decision, a choice that we make whether we're gonna succumb to the fear and not cross over the line, or we're gonna face the fear, cross over, and realize something new about ourselves that we didn't know we had. Just like
Yes.
you, I was kind of thinking and feeling I was someone else's spouse, I was someone else's mom, but I no longer knew who I was. I didn't know what
Yes.
I liked, what I disliked because of all the peacemaking for many, many years. So it's been an interesting journey. Like you said, it's a journey, coming out and discovering who you are, what makes you tick, what do you like, what do you dislike, what are you all about? Speaking of that, what makes you happy?
Oh, wow. Well, I can tell you after years of work, the number one thing that makes me happy is nature, is being in nature. I have, so outside my window right here, I have multiple birdhouses. So I live in a beautiful rural area, and there is nothing more comforting to me than going out in the morning on my front porch with a cup of coffee, my journal, which I have beside me from this morning, my journaling practice that I started when I had made the decision to leave my marriage. I have continued, and it is taking the time every single morning. I go out on the porch. I literally just drop in to what is happening around me, the silence, and when you actually get silent, literally get silent and listen to the silence, it's amazing what comes in. And so I love sitting on my front porch with my journal, and I first just do some deep breathing. So it's like that, there's nothing better than coming back to my breath. And then literally just dropping into the sounds of the birds, the feel of the sun on my face, the wind, and sometimes even just looking up. And it can be a freezing cold day out, but just literally experiencing everything that's happening around me. And it gives me peace. And what I didn't realize was how much I was missing peace in my life. There was so much noise constantly of what am I going to do next? How am I going to fix, like literally looking into the future of how am I going to fix what's coming up next before it happens? And I was so much stuck in my head that there was no peace, none. I didn't even know what it felt like from the moment I would put my feet on the floor in the morning until the time I would go to bed at night. I was in this worry, fear, anxiety mode of what's going to happen next. And what has been so beautiful on this journey is how I have literally embraced peace in my life and allowed myself to have that time that is just for me. Because I think as moms, especially, we take on this role of mom and being the perfect mom to our children, and we lose ourselves in that. And the beautiful gift that we can give our children is when we model these behaviors for ourselves of putting our what it looks like to put yourself first, so that as they become adults and they grow up, they see that and they say, my mom valued peace. She valued her own time and she prioritized that. And so I'm going to give myself that gift too. And I think so many moms get that backwards. And we say, I'll do that when my kids are older. I will put myself first when they go off to college or they do whatever they're going to do. And our life is just passing us by and we're missing beautiful moments. And so that's such a big question. I mean, I could go on and on about what makes me happy, but I would say really prioritizing my peace, prioritizing my time, and what brings me joy has been really happiness for me.
Yeah, I love how you were the peacemaker and now you've allowed yourself to experience what it feels like.
Oh,
So
I love that. Yes.
switching from being the peacemaker to actually being on the receiving end of that peace for yourself.
Yeah.
And you're so right, that as moms, I think as women, we take so many roles that we often neglect ourselves in the process because we're always thinking about 25 things going on. I don't know
Yes.
who said it, but there was like an interview or something. men have like little boxes in their head, and this thought goes here, and this like the different compartments, while women, they have all interconnections going all around.
Yes.
A conversation here, and you're already thinking, oh, I have to pick up groceries, I have to drop off my kid, I gotta do the laundry, I gotta like, so it's always the noise, the things that
Yes.
aren't even here. And it's all right, we're missing out on the present. Meanwhile, the present is all we have. And I love how you were able to experience the nature, and it brings so much peace. And especially the morning when we just begin, when we step our foot on the ground, before the day kind of takes over us, we gotta have that me time. We gotta have that time, that peace, that whatever kind of energizes you or calms you down. I think first few moments of the day is important to dedicate to you and set your own agenda. What do you want to experience today? What kind of things kind of inspire you, instead of being swallowed by all the different appointments and things that you have to do.
Yes. Exactly. And I remember, I always tell this story real quick is of when prior to doing this work, right after I got divorced, I remember every single morning when it was a school day, yelling to my kids, like, where are you? You're going to be late. You need to come have breakfast. I've got this, blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't until I realized, wait a second, what are you doing to yourself? And I said, nope, I'm going to sit down in the morning. I'm going to have a cup of coffee. I'm going to journal, and I'm going to tell my kids they need to set their alarms. They need to be down here by a certain time. And if they aren't, then they're going to take the late, and they're going to take that is accountability, right? And then I'm not going to call them out. I'm going to say, you're late. So you're going to have to take detention or staying after school or whatever it is as a consequence for not being ready on time. And man, did that shift the household. I remember the first morning my kids coming downstairs, and I literally was sitting in a chair journaling with my coffee, and they're like, what's wrong? And I'm like, nothing's wrong. Actually, everything's really good. And they're like, oh, okay. It was like just that small little change. And wow, did that shift me in the morning. I was not anxious, and they did not want to be late. So it started to shift because they didn't want to have to stay after and be that kid. So it was such a beautiful gift to me and to them.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
I used to, and I'm gonna restart that practice. I used to go in the morning and watch sunrises and start my day that way. And my kids were the ones kind of, okay, we gotta go, we gotta go.
I love that.
I never had to yell like, oh, where are you?
Yeah. And how great. They're like, wait a second, what's she doing? She's prioritizing her. Yes.
Yeah. And it makes you happy as a result as well. You're not as reactive, you're not as like anxious all the time. You're more calm, you're more peaceful. You're better parent, you're a better human to them.
Yes.
They would love you more for that because you took the time to
Oh, it shifted our
feel who you are.
relationship completely. Yes, exactly.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Ooh, I love that question. That we aren't in control of other people. We are only in control of ourselves and how we show up in the world. And I think, oh God, if I could have known that as a kid, that how me pleasing others is going to, it's almost like, I never looked at it this way till recently, is that it's almost a form of manipulation, codependency, because you're trying to create this world where you don't have to deal with other people's emotion, with any conflict. And so you create this persona that's fake. It's not authentic. It's to please others. And in doing that, you're trying to control. So it's almost like a form of manipulation in protecting yourself. You're trying to manipulate others so you get the outcome you want. And if I could go back and just say, oh, you could have had so much more peace in your life if you were just living your life for you. If you were just, one of my favorite things as a kid, and I've come back to that recently, is that every night when my mom would cook dinner, we had a swing set out back of our house, and I loved to sing. I have the worst voice in the world, but I love music and I love to sing. And I would go out back on that swing set. And it was the one time in my life as a kid where I felt free and where I felt like I was really me. And I would just swing and I would sing at the top of my lungs. And my parents still tell, my mom especially still tells this story of making dinner. And I could hear her out there just singing. But I felt so free in that moment because there was nobody I had to please. There was nobody that I had to walk on eggshells around. I could just be me. And if I had lived my whole childhood that way, oh, into my adult life, it would have just saved me so much heartache and pain. But I realize we can't go back. We can only go forward. But yeah, I would definitely say that the only person I'm in control of is me.
This is true. We can only control how we react to a situation. We cannot control the situation, but we can control our reaction and the time
Exactly.
that we stay angry, miserable, because it takes the same amount of energy for us to be happy or for us to be sad or for us to be angry. It takes the same amount of energy.
Yes, 100%.
So, given your history and your experiences, how do you help people now? And what led you kind of to start doing that for yourself?
Yes. Oh, thank you for that question. So, yeah, as I was mentioning before, it was really this feeling of I couldn't believe how stuck I was after my divorce. I couldn't believe that I I literally couldn't put one foot in front of the other. And so I decided during COVID. So I got divorced during COVID, which delayed the whole process. But COVID was a blessing and a curse, right? It was a curse in that I couldn't see my friends and I felt very isolated, but it was a blessing in that it forced me to be alone. It forced me to really do the hard work. And so I actually joined this thing called Clubhouse, and it was a platform where people would share. And I found at that time something called the Miracle Morning. And it's by this man called, his name is Hal Elrod, if you don't know him. And his book is amazing. And anyway, and I started creating new habits for myself. And those habits were around what I just shared, getting up in the morning and really having this routine that was all about me. And so in doing that, there were so many things that I uncovered about myself and in journaling and doing a few other things. And so I really started to step out of who am I outside of the marriage? I'm no longer a wife. I'm no longer a mother, or I am a mother, sorry. I'm no longer a part of this family unit as a mom. I'm now a single mom, but who am I underneath all of this? And so in doing that, I decided to go back and get certified as a life coach. And I created this program that I call From Mrs. to Me. And it's basically 6 pillars, starting with what I call the clearing, which is really all around those habits, all around sort of, we've got to build a foundation. We've got to start somewhere so we can really start to look at who am I? And because we can't create a life that is authentic to us and fulfilling if we don't know who we are. And so I created these 6 pillars, and I work with clients now, women, on really that rediscovery process of rebuilding after divorce and really starting to navigate that journey of from Mrs. to me, which is one that is in alignment with your truth and not being afraid to put yourself out there in a vulnerable way. And you will start to see all of, you'll start to build your support system. When you really are showing up who you are, those people that should be in your life start to show up. And you also become open to what do I need to surrender to? What are those things that are already out there for me that are showing up when I quiet my mind and I am truly living in my truth? And so that's what I developed. I developed this from Mrs. to Me program that is all about rediscovery and moving forward and creating that life. And then I I always knew that I wanted to create a platform for women to be able to share their real, raw stories of divorce without a filter around what did I overcome? What did I overcome? And how did I transform my life? So it's from Mrs. to Me podcast is all about that. It's all about giving women a platform to be able to share their real stories of divorce, how they were resilient, and how they walked into that discomfort and really transformed their lives. And I love it so much. I also have a community which is called From Mrs. to Me, Rediscovering You After Divorce, which is a community of women where we go in and we share our stories, but also I provide them with tools and resources on how to really rediscover yourself and really step forward in your true identity. So that's the work I'm doing now. I love it so much. And not only, I think what's great about the whole process of rediscovery is not just showing up authentically as who you are as a person, but living that out in what you do, whether that's a hobby, whether that's, activities and friends that you surround yourself with. It's really, truly just creating everything that is in support of who you are now. And so that's why I love the work that I do, because it truly is all about living our truth.
Right. I also have created a program also about rediscovering and finding happiness from within, because oftentimes we're seeking it somewhere else,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
finding out.
completely. We are
Yeah.
seeking it somewhere else, all of us. And we're definitely not gonna get it from somewhere else. We can keep trying, but it's not gonna show up.
Yeah, totally. What is your superpower?
Ooh, what is my superpower? I would say my superpower is connecting with others.
Mhm.
I I love, there's nothing I love more than real connection, real authentic connection with another person. And I love bringing people together that really want to be honest and vulnerable and authentic. And I just have a way of that's why it's my superpower. It's building relationships, it's building connection. It's I've done that really throughout my life, but now it's really at that. I think I bring this energy that is very supportive and welcoming and loving. And yeah, I guess it's all about connection for me. It's all about that's why I do the work that I do, because I love connecting with these women and really giving them an opportunity to open up and share in a way they haven't shared before. And for me, that is the greatest gift when I can do that. And I can see somebody come back and say, wow, thank you, because now I was able to go do this. And I never thought I could do that. And to someone else, it might seem really silly and small, but to that person, that was a huge win. And if I can give them that, then that's such a gift for me.
Wow, I love it. Yeah, I think it's important to have that superpower of connecting, because that's how we interact in the world, by connecting with others, by creating those partnerships or exchanges.
Yes.
building communities. So awesome, awesome. Uh, was there a book that you read along your journey that kind of inspired you or allowed you to transform your life for the better?
Oh, wow. There are so many books. So I became and I am still a really big fan of Melody Beattie, who is all about codependency. And she wrote a book called Codependent No More. And she also wrote a book on its daily meditations. So she has each day is a different chapter. And I love her. The other book, the other, I guess, author is Michael Singer. And Michael Singer wrote, oh, I'm not going to remember the name right now, The Soul. Do you know? Oh, I can't. I'm looking at my
The
bookshelf.
Untethered Soul.
The Untethered Soul. Thank you. My favorite book of all time.
Oh,
It literally, it brought everything to me back to what's really important, which is being in the moment. And there's nothing wrong in this moment. There's something wrong when we project out and when we start doing, but when we are really here in this moment, dropped in, there's absolutely nothing wrong. And it's a beautiful place to be. And so, yeah, that the untethered soul is by far. So Melody Beattie helped me get through the journey of leaving my marriage and dealing with the codependency. And then Michael Singer was all about the next journey, which was for me that untethered soul of really letting go and dropping into the now.
yeah, yeah. I love that book too. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yes,
Because all we really have is the present moment. A lot of
exactly.
times we think, oh, I'm gonna do this thing, I don't know, next year, later.
Exactly.
We miss
Yeah.
out on all this. It could be a smile on your child's face or seeing a sunrise, or in your case, witnessing your nature in the morning when you're sitting with a
Yes.
cup of coffee and you're right there, you're safe, you sound, everything is peaceful and beautiful. And when we get to enjoy that, because life made up of those micro moments that we string together in memories that kind of feel alive. So
Yes.
being present
We
is
are missing out. Yes.
we think we have this long life, but then I don't know if you noticed, I noticed as I get older, the life just passes by so quickly. You turn around and another Friday is gone.
Oh, it's unbelievable. My kids are, I have one that's graduating from college
Oh,
and
wow.
one who's about ready to go to college. And I'm like, how did that happen? I blinked. How did it happen? So, yeah, completely agree.
What advice would you share with single parents who are just stepping onto the journey of single parenting?
Oh, yes. Oh, what a great question. I would say the best thing you can do as a parent is be curious with your kids. Really be curious because when we come from a place of curiosity, we learn so much and it doesn't put the other person on defense. Like, I spent so much time as a parent trying to make sure they were making the right decisions, right? We think we know what's right and we think we know how to protect them. And I remember, I think it was my daughter who one day just said to me, "You're not hearing me. You're not hearing me." And I'm like, "What do you mean I'm not hearing you? I'm right here." And I'm like, ah. And I remember I read something somewhere and it was about curiosity. And I'm so curious about people. That's how I connect to people, is learning about them. And I'm like, but I wasn't doing it with my own children. And I'm like, you can learn so much by just being curious, just, hey, what's going on? And letting them talk without interrupting them, just letting them share. My favorite place to be with my kids was always the car. And the reason is because they didn't have a distraction. They had to be there with me. And I just listening to them, listening to them share, I learned so much on those car rides. when I wasn't busy saying, are you doing your homework? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And I was just sitting there, allowing them to share and taking it all in. And that's when we would bond. And so I would say to any parent, try to be curious. You will learn so much. Instead, I say talk less and learn more.
You're right. You're right. Sometimes you might learn things you didn't know you like out of
Yeah,
the ordinary things that you didn't
exactly.
consider. And yeah,
We're busy doing this to them, not just sitting and being. And it's that whole Michael Singer thing, right? Of just
yeah,
dropping into the moment and being present with them.
totally, totally. Any fun projects you're working on that you like to share?
Oh, yes, so many fun. Well, right now, I am in the process of creating a retreat that I'll be doing for women. So I live in the Northeast. I live in Maine. I think you said Portland, Maine at the beginning. So I am in the process of creating a retreat. There'll be more information to come shortly around really just it's for women after divorce who are ready to really dive deep into that identity, that who am I outside of being a mom, outside of being a daughter, a friend, all of the things, who are really ready to dive deep and to also connect, to build connection with others who are going through the same thing and find support. So that's next for me. I'll be doing that. I'm hoping to launch that in September. And then just continuing with new speaking engagements that are coming up. I had a summit I just participated in, and I'm doing more, another live this weekend. So Saturday, I'll be doing a live. It's called The Discovery, which is one of my pillars. And I'll be doing that in my Facebook group, which is again from Mrs. to Me, Rediscovering You After Divorce, for anyone who wants to join. And that will be saved there too as a free resource. So those are some of the things I'm working on right now.
Awesome. I love that. Retreat ideas sound amazing. And congratulations on all the speaking engagements. It's
Thank you.
important to
Yes,
share the message and your story because in the end of the day, we're all walking each other home. If you're a step behind and somebody is a step ahead, we can help each other.
exactly. That's why we do this work, right?
Totally, totally. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to share?
Wow. I think just, if there's anyone on this journey, I mean, for me, it was, fear is really it's a real deterrent from growth. You can't grow if you're stuck in the fear. And I think for me, being married to someone who was an addict, there's so much fear around what's going to happen to my kids. And I think that takes over. And the kids are resilient. I think we don't realize how resilient they are. And they're also really smart. And I always, if you think that you are keeping something from them, they know. They know when you are sad. They know when you are scared. They know when something is off. And it makes I think their security and safety feel out of balance.
Mhm.
And even though they're not saying anything, they're also in on this journey with you. So just remember that I think the best thing that you can do is be honest with yourself first and what you need, and then everything will fall into place. And your kids at the end of the day just want you to be happy. They really do, just as much as we want them to be happy.
So, so true. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so
Yes.
much for coming on. If people would like to find you or learn more about you, where would they go?
Yes. So they can first find my podcast, which is From Mrs. to Me. They can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. They can also find me, as I mentioned, in my Facebook community, which is From Mrs. to Me, Rediscovering You After Divorce. And they can also find me on FromMrsToMe.com. where they can find more about the work I'm doing. I'll be putting information in there about the upcoming retreats and additional information that's upcoming that I haven't quite published yet, but any information. I also have a blog on there, and they can find out how to work with me as a coach.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your wisdom. I loved having you. It was a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I loved this conversation.